associated with the convention registration, click Find My Event and choose ABCA Convention. Your feedback is very important to us, so please take a moment after the session to complete the survey. To do so, go to the app, select the session, and click Session Feedback. If you have any questions about the process, just let me know. Don't forget to visit the ABCA Career Center in the Volleyball Marketplace to look at open jobs, post your resume, and sign up for counseling appointments. Before we begin, we have a representative from Volley Station here to speak.
Good morning. That mic is not on. Have you turn this one on? Because I have this.
Eduardo does not set me up to succeed. That's okay. Good morning. This might be a weird presentation. I'll start with that. First, thanks to the ABCA. This event is awesome. And as I get older and I see people around that I see once a year and get to hang out with them a little bit every year at this point, it's just awesome. It's great to see everybody. Some friends that I've known for a long time, some colleagues that are coming over from across the sea. So thanks to the ABCA for making this happen. This is also like a really cool community, and I see some people that I know, and I see some people I don't know. But the volleyball tech community over the last 5 years is special. I think everybody's here to help each other succeed and make their lives easier, and it's been great. So thanks. I told myself I wouldn't get choked up about this, but it's just been cool to see. So thanks for coming out to support us today. Now I'm going to transition into the presentation. So first of all, we are Volley Station. We are a volleyball tech only volleyball company. All right, we are based in Poland, and we work with people throughout the world. And if you guys don't know anything about Poland volleyball, you should. And so, who here like watches Vietnam? Right? You guys notice like every year there's something in Poland. And you guys know why? Because this tickets sell out in like 15 minutes. It's an amazing experience if you ever get to go. If you do get to go, you can look up my friend Evo here, and he will take care of you while you're there. So, we do a lot of things. We have a lot of products, and we have even more new products coming out. Most of you in this room might know us for Volley Station Pro, either in the collegiate or the pro space in the US, or the international space. But we also do competition management for the pro leagues in the United States, as well as around the world. We work with all 3 pro leagues in the United States, Polish league, we work in Japan, we work in Brazil, we work in Turkey. We are everywhere, and it's really fun. So, what's great about this is we work with clients, and we are able to customize our products for their needs. And we pride ourselves on our customer service to these clients and making solutions that work for them. And within that, we get to talk not only just about the nuts and bolts of statistics, but like how we can help their leagues. And so this presentation is a culmination of a lot of talks from around the world. And Eduardo and I have gone back and forth on it, and we're super excited to present this. So this might not be like your traditional spreadsheet statistics or graphs or displays, but it's taking data gathering and pushing it to like actual data usage. And we're excited to present today. So, as you guys know, if you know me, you know my story, I've been very lucky. I'm lucky to get involved with this company. Some of you laugh because, thank you, Catherine Plummer. And I've also been super lucky to have this guy right here as my friend and colleague. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce the man, the myth, the legend, the guy that only needs one name, Eduardo.
All right. So, here's the thing. We've been talking so much, or we're inundated with this talk of the growth of volleyball fandom,
attendance records left and right, viewership on television. And so then the question becomes, if we've already done that, then what do we do next? How do we fulfill this potential that we're showing? This is bigger than us, bigger than the coaches and the people that are in this room, right? And so I think we need to ask the question, where did these fans come from? Especially the ones watching on television. They didn't come to this game from channel surfing. They came to this game because they saw how their friends and their loved ones connected to it. And they became connected to the game because of those people. They didn't connect to this sport first because of knowledge. They connected to it first because of emotion. They love the way that this game is contested. And so the question becomes, how do we leverage that? What makes this game so much fun to watch? What makes people so connected to it? And so I'm going to use the example of Tony Romo. He is connected to football the way that we are connected to volleyball. And he has both the knowledge and the emotion. I did not grow up playing football, so I don't understand the game in any kind of way that people who watch it regularly or grew up playing it, etc., feel that. But when I watch Tony Romo and I listen to him, I can get behind that. Give you some examples in case you're unfamiliar with Tony Romo. I want you to notice the excitement that he has for what's happening. I also want you to notice how he points you towards not only what's going to happen, but where it's going to happen.
Good. Here comes the run to the left. There's a run to the left. This one's left guard, it's Lynch. He's taking the foul with him.
The back's going to roll right and launch the ball out of bounds. It's going to look weird.
Ball trying. Launching out of bounds. And Tony stealing the signals once again. Well, it's not my friend.
They've got to go back to the Brady speed or something, don't they? Oh, they're killing it. Usually means a motion and a run out wide to the right.
Here's the hand.
They're to the end zone. The Sonny Michelle and the Patriots are back in front.
But taking back the lead.
They're going to run this ball. Kansas City's got to sell out.
There's a handoff to Burkhead.
Burkhead pulls ahead and scores the touchdown. Brock's got a chip. Running back's got to help, so he has time to throw. Once again, that'll win in the middle of the field.
Pocket seal. Down the middle.
Edelman again with a third down catch. That's up for pressure on the top here.
They're coming to him.
And Dalton is taken down by Josh Jones. Just get up and hand this ball off to the left. He can't. He sees all those guys outside. He's trying to come back and run to the right.
There it is, Tony.
That's really. Watch the middle of the field.
79. Where the field is. Back to the 3. It's LA2.
So here's some things about Tony Romo. He loves not just the game, but he also loves the analysis and the insight. He demystifies things. He connects what we see, meaning the context, the situation that it's in, to what is about to happen. He increases our engagement in how he does that. And he helps us understand through his explanations, not just what happened, but why it happened. And so he understands not just how the game is played, but he understands how it is contested, what matters. And so the thing is, we don't need a Tony Romo in volleyball. That's not the thing that's missing. What we need is a framework that supports people like him so that they can go nerd out in front of audiences, so that those audiences can learn and enjoy not just the game, but also the way that we get to talk about it. That we get that passion that comes through, and that passion is built on something. It's built on this understanding. And that understanding comes from more than just having played the game. And so what I'm talking about here is that we need to give people who love and understand the game, we need to give them tools that are going to help them share that love and understanding with a larger audience. Now, we have some tools, but those tools that we're using currently are limiting the stories that we can tell. We want to talk about attack efficiency, or the way it shows up on box scores these days, they'll talk about hit percentage. We're not baseball. While attack efficiency is a useful metric for sure, it's also a dead end. It doesn't really allow us to be able to continue exploring what's happening the way that some of the other metrics we're going to talk about do. It doesn't map as clearly onto performance. I mean, for starters, hit percentage isn't even a percentage. Right? We're going to say that their hit percentage is 230. What does that mean? How does that translate into what you're seeing on the court? What does that tell you about the next attack that you're going to see? Assists. We hear broadcasters and fans talking about assists, but we're not basketball. But that's the tool that they have to be able to talk about setters. But they don't really describe what a setter's doing to help their team. We get match level stats. The problem is, we're not playing a single game. And so when football, basketball, soccer teams run into the locker room at halftime and then run back out at the end of halftime, the score is the same when they go in as when they come out. But that's not what happens in volleyball. We reset. We have a new competition in 25, and that competition can be fundamentally different than the one that just took place a few minutes before it. Errors. We hear errors talked about constantly. And I understand that that's where our eyes go, especially as coaches. But errors aren't the strongest indicator of winning. And if they're not the strongest indicator of winning, then they're not going to be the best way for us to talk about the game in ways that people are really going to connect to. And so what we see is that the commonly used stats in fandom don't belong to us. They belong to these other sports, and we just sort of bolted them on. They were created by people who loved stats and loved other sports, and somebody said, well, help us come up with stats for volleyball. We are at a point now where we should be driving the conversations about how the game is talked about, instead of having others dictate to us how the game is talked about. We need to get in here and talk about things in ways, or talk about the game in ways that actually describe how the game works. Some of the metrics that we can use that describe the way volleyball actually works are going to be simple, universal, and intuitive. And by universal, I mean that some of these are going to be things that are talked about internationally already. Some of them maybe should be. They're probably available, but we don't get that exposure to those international games. And so to understand the stats that we should be valuing and the stats that we should be bringing to the forefront in our conversations about the game, we need to understand how volleyball is actually contested. And so to do that, I'm going to show you a video of something that isn't volleyball, but I think it maps on. A hurdles race. Don't worry, it'll be over in like 12 seconds. Here's the thing. If I'm going to make an example of another sport to say this is how volleyball works, this is the one I'm going to pick, the hurdles. You know why? How much time did you just spend watching how many hurdles got hit? That's not the thing that matters. What matters is who runs the fastest, not who runs the cleanest. At some point, yeah, maybe running clean works, but running fast works more. And so I bring up a sprint like this because volleyball is a series of sprints. it is 3 races to 25 points. And those races need to be are going to be won by who is running the fastest, not necessarily who's running the cleanest. And so that's going to influence a lot of what we're going to be talking about here. One other thing that we need to understand about how volleyball works is rally scoring. Right? We all understand how rally scoring works, but there's an implication here that we're missing out on. And that's the fact that you have to keep going. Right? Go back to the races here versus what we see or what we hear about in other sports that are timed. When we hear about running out the clock, playing not to lose, things like that. Their version of playing conservatively is not our version of playing conservatively. And so we need to be able to talk in a way that reflects those differences between our sports. And so I want us to move away from having these traditional stats be the centerpieces of our conversations around volleyball, the centerpieces of our broadcast about volleyball. And I'm proposing that we talk more about these building blocks. We're going to call them building blocks because, again, they're simple. They're in a lot of ways fairly basic, but that's the beauty of them. That's the power of them. They're going to do things like show us and tell us things about offensive quality, serve-receive quality, momentum, and they map cleanly onto what fans already feel intuitively as they watch the game. So we'll talk about kill percentage first. It is similar to hit percentage or attack efficiency, but I'll say this. Kill percentage explains more with less. It's better at describing how often a player or a team scores when attacking, right? So I mentioned before, like, hey, if the hitter hits 230, what does that mean then as I watch them get ready to take their next swing? But if I tell you, hey, they're 50% kill, now you have an image in your mind like, hey, they are how likely are they to hit the floor with this next ball? Like, that's an image that you can understand. And it's better at predicting outcomes. It's better at being able to layer other information on top of it. And we'll see that here in a minute. Now, you might say, well, if they're similar, why don't we use both? Or why don't we just stick with what we have? So here what we have in this plot, I've got kill percentage over here and attack efficiency over here. Each dot on here is a team that has played in the semifinals or finals over the last 10 years. And what you see then is the different colored dots are clusters. So the blue dots are the top third, the orange dots are the middle third, and the red dots are the bottom third. And so you can see here, they're all sort of clumped over this way, somewhere between 30% and 45% kill. One outlier, sorry, Kansas had a really bad night. Over here is those same information, but with attack efficiency instead. And what you can see here is, sorry, the laser pointer does not show up super well. Right here, all these blue dots, this top third, notice how that arrangement is very much reflected here. The only difference that you see is these two dots here being spread out versus those same two dots over here overlapping. And what that tells you is that those teams, one of those teams had a whole bunch of zeros and the other team didn't. But that's not going to tell us a whole lot about who's winning. That's just going to tell us a whole lot about how they were attacking. So this is why I'm saying, you know what? It's okay if we just talk about kill percentage. It's going to be similar to attack efficiency for most people, but it's going to allow us to do some better things later on. So staying on kill percentage, what we have here is this is broken up by position. Again, this is teams that have played, these are Final Four, so semifinal and final matches from the last 10 years. This also includes the matches that we saw last weekend. So the round of 16, and the round of 8. Again, these are clustered into thirds. So top third, middle third, bottom third. What we see here is middles in the center. The top middles that play in the semifinals and finals are going to be about 55% killer. So again, that means that every other ball, roughly, we should be expecting them to find the floor with it. The middle third is going to be a little bit less than that. It's kind of hard to feel that difference as you're watching the game, and that's important to recognize. For outsides, you're right in the middle between 40 and 45% kill for the best of them. So we should be expecting them to get kills less often than middles, also less often than right sides. Opposites are right around 45% kill at the top of the game. So this sets us up to understand better what we're seeing happen on the floor in terms of, did this player score or not? And we can take kill percentage and we can then see how it relates to some of the other metrics we're going to talk about, specifically like side out percentage. But first, I want to talk about distribution. Right? We talked about assists don't really tell us how setters are helping their team. You know what would make for much more rich conversations about setters? Distribution would be. Because that connects us better to the way that the offense runs. It connects us a little bit better to how the passing is affecting the segments. It creates some great opportunities to be able to talk about decision making and strategy. You know how we often hear people talking about that the setter is the quarterback of a volleyball team. But we're not talking about the decision making and the strategy for setters the way we are about quarterbacks, are we? If we had some metrics that would help us understand that better, that would be a great building block for us to be able to start having these kinds of conversations. So here's what distribution data can look like. Again, this over here is all semifinal and final matches from the last 10 years. What you see over here is the blue is sets in front, so left side. The orange is sets to the middle. The red is sets to the opposite. P is for pipe, it's a backward attack, and S is for a dunk. We're not gonna see that happen in any of the rest of these, mostly because I'm going to talk about 3-hitter rotations. So the setter's going to be in the back row. So what I want you to see here is teams in the semifinals and finals, when they are in 3-hitter rotations and they get a good pass. So you'll notice that this set of bars and this set of bars are a different set of data, are a different way of slicing the data. This is a good pass. This is less than a good pass. What's a good pass? Not super important, crazily enough. We don't need to get into grading pass quality in order to have these conversations. All you need to know is that a good pass makes the setter's job easy. So if you're out there saying, yeah, the setter looks like they're pretty comfortable right now, that's a good pass. That's all you need to know. When a good pass happens, these teams in the semifinals and finals distribute the ball almost evenly between the 3 front row attackers. That is something that we should be talking about. How are setters distributing the ball? And that's something you can notice as you're watching the game unfold. And so now to give you some ideas about how we would talk about this, here's what Kentucky looked like last weekend. They are skewed a little bit more to the left side, even when the setter's job is easy. When the setter's job is a little bit harder, they are very similar to what finals teams look like. Why do they skew like this when they're in system? I'll give you 2 reasons. Ava Hudson and Brooklyn DeLay. These are things that we can be talking about that that allow us to talk about strategy, decision making, and not just how great those hitters are. All right, same data on the left side. Here's Wisconsin last weekend. So Wisconsin does not look like teams from the last 10 years in the semis and finals. They are leaning more towards the outside when they're perfect, and a little bit less to the right and a little bit more to the middle. 2 out of those 3 rotations, Mimi Collier. Only 1 out of those 3 rotations, Carter Booth. So that impacts the decisions that are being made, where the ball's going to go, because the setter's thinking about, how do I score? How do I win? Right? We don't need to understand anything deeper about the metrics to be able to recognize why that ball gets distributed like it does. What happens when the setter's job isn't easy? It skews even more to the left, even less to the right, roughly the same in the middle. Again, you got Mimi Collier out there, finalist for Player of the Year. Yeah, we're going to ride that. Same data on the left. Here's Pitt. Pitt, very similar when the setter's job is easy. When the setter's job is not easy, look at that red bar now. Again, one reason why. Will there be a bad call? This impacts decision making. This impacts strategy. This is a way that we can be talking about this. These are, if we had distribution information, we could be talking about why is the setter making the ball go one way or the other? Why are they so balanced when it's a good pass? Why don't you just settle it via Babcock all the time? Because that's not going to be good enough. A&M. A&M skews heavily to the right side in 3-hitter rotations. Logan Lednick. I think it's really interesting, though, how low their sets to the left side are, considering how good Stowers has been, right? Helmet is going to be in the front row one out of these 3 rotations. So I'm a little surprised to see that. But again, this is a conversation made possible by distribution data. Something that we wouldn't be able to understand if we were just looking at attack efficiency and assists. Receptions. I mentioned before, we don't need to know a whole lot about how to grade reception quality. Right now, just being able to talk about the number of receptions would be enough. We can get more adventurous later, but let's start building this by talking about receptions. That would allow us to connect to some serving strategy conversations. We would be able to talk about, hey, this player's being targeted. They're trying to stay away from this player. But it's hard to talk about that if you don't have any numbers to back that assertion up. So, here's an example from last weekend. What you see here, all these dots represent one player in one match. As the dots move to the right, that represents a larger number of receptions. As the dots move upwards, it represents a better first ball efficiency. We can think about it roughly as being first ball kill. What we see here is I've highlighted the 2 liberos in that match, Ava Underwood and Lainey Chopra. They received roughly the same amount of serves, 47 to 51. Close enough that the numbers aren't going to skew a whole lot. What we see here, though, Underwood, her team hit 191 when she passed the ball. Showboy, they hit 118. That's a 70-point difference. That's significant. We should be talking about that. But the only way we can talk about that is if we have numbers about how many times players are receiving the ball. Points. Why do I want to talk about points and not errors? Because points tell more of the story. How do I know they tell more of the story? All right, those long bars at the top. The top bar represents when teams in the semis and finals win sets. The bottom bar represents when they lose sets. That black bar in the middle, that's 0. Everything to the left of that is an error, an unforced error. Everything to the right of that is an earned point. So these are kills in blue, blocks in orange, and aces in red. So we should be talking about kills a whole lot more than we're talking about anything else. Hey, kill percentage. That's an idea. Notice that, yes, you do make more errors when you lose a set. But look at the size of the gap. Right? There's not a lot of difference between those two. It works out to maybe 1 error. Look at the gap over here in terms of the points scored. There's a much larger gap. So again, we should be talking about points more than errors because points are going to impact winning and losing much more than errors are. Points are going to work very well with other metrics. And points are going to set the stage for some other stories that we can tell. For example, now I'm going to start talking about kill percentage, keeping in mind points. So what I've got here is these 2 center bars are Texas. Indiana is on the far left, Wisconsin is on the far right. So these 2 bars are a comparison of Texas and Indiana playing each other. What we see here is Texas made errors at the same rate in both matches, 6%. But they were 43% killed when they won, and they were only 36% killed when they lost playing Wisconsin. So it's not the errors that made the difference in that match. It's the kills. Texas made errors at a lower rate than Wisconsin did. Notice that it's 6% for Texas, 11% for Wisconsin. Wisconsin was making errors at almost twice the rate. But it didn't matter. Because they scored, they had a 10% or a 10-point difference in kill percentage. So again, these are things that we should be talking about, but they become possible only when we look at some of these metrics, when we start talking about kill percentage and looking at how they impact winning and losing. Another example, Creighton. Sorry, Caleb. Left-hand side is Creighton against ASU, a match they win in the round of 16. The 2 bars on the right are Creighton and Kentucky, the match that Kentucky wins. Here's what you see. Creighton played 2 teams that were almost identical in terms of both kill percentage and error percentage. So what makes the difference? Was it the error percentage for Creighton going from 6 to 12? No. It's their kill percentage going from 46 to 23. So, hey, if you want to make the argument that if Creighton would have made fewer errors, yeah, sure, it would have made a difference, but would it have made a winning difference? No. Again, this is why we should be talking about points. This is why we should be talking about kills. How do I know that points are worth talking about more than errors? How do I know that they apply more to winning than errors do? Here's how I know. When semifinalists win sets, that's these 2 box plots right here. They earn about 19 or 20 points. That's that box right there. When they lose sets over here, they make, when they win sets, they make about 5 errors. So you're earning 19 points you're making 5 errors. When semifinalists lose sets, they score about 15 points, and they give up about 5 errors. So why would we be talking about errors as being the difference maker in sets? It goes back to the hurdles race. Remember, I said it doesn't matter who runs the cleanest, it matters who runs the fastest. Every once in a while, yes, there are times when the earned points are the same, and then errors might make a difference. But most of the time, this is what you're going to get. The points are going to tell the difference. So let's talk about the points. Now, talking about team scoring, side out and point score efficiencies or percentages. It only appears in some box scores. And so as a result of that, it gets ignored most of the time. I heard it mentioned once last weekend. I heard one commentator make an offhand comment about one team siding out well. But the thing is, this is our best description of how a team scores. And us being able to describe how a team scores is going to help us understand how a team wins. And so it creates opportunities to discuss points, point runs better, point swings better, because as these numbers fluctuate, that's going to help us understand what's happening in the game far better than when the box score says it's a 4-0 run. We can start to see, hey, side out efficiency is decreasing for this team. They're giving up points. And so side out percentage also allows us to look at why teams are winning and losing. Again, left-hand side, semifinal and final matches from the last 10 years. Broken down by team. What you see here, the average, I've got it broken out into 3-hitter rotations and 2-hitter rotations. It is roughly the same in the semifinals and finals. It doesn't matter if you're in a 2-hitter rotation or a 3-hitter rotation. You're going to side out a little bit better than half the time. And so on the right is matches from last weekend. The difference now, 3-hitter rotations, teams sided out at about 60, almost 61%. In 2-hitter rotations, they sided out at 56%. That's a significant difference. You know what that tells me? If you can't side out in 2-hitter rotations, you're on the couch instead of playing this weekend. Again, conversations that are only possible if we start looking at side out. We start talking about how well teams are scoring, and to some extent, how they're scoring in 3-hitter versus 2-hitter. That's a little bit more for the future. But to keep it nice and clean, we don't have to worry about 2-hitter versus 3-hitter. Let's just look at this. This is side out when teams win sets and when teams lose sets. 64% to 50%. That's something salient. That's something obvious, something noticeable, something we should be talking about. How did the final score end up being what it is? Because they sided out at this rate. Point scorer. This can be talked about in terms of how hard did we make it for the opponent to side out. So 46% when you win a set, 32% when you lose. So what can we be talking about here? We could be talking about, hey, if you can side out at 60% and you can keep your opponent at 55% or worse, you're winning. That seems like a good, absolute kind of measure that people love to be able to talk about. Last thing is set level data. Right, I mentioned, we start new races to 25. And so when we do that, the next race does not have to be run like the one before it. And so it would be good to be able to have conversations around those differences. But we can only do that if we have set level data. But right now, what we get for the most part is just match level data. You do get current set data for kills, errors, and attempts for the team. And that's it. Nobody has individual player set level data available to them as you're watching the game. And that really limits what we can talk about. We could have the opportunity to talk about why did this team side out so much better in this set than they did in the last one. We could do that if we had a better feel for what happened in just this set versus what happened in previous ones. I think set level data matters. It's worth talking about because of this variability. Each one of these box plots represents an individual player's performance. Each of the dots is one set, and all of those sets add up to an average. You can see the variance in these performances. And so if these performances vary this much, then it's worth talking about what's the performance that's happening right now in this set, and how does that compare to the last set? How does that compare to the last match, to their season? But that conversation is only possible if we have set level data. So, looking ahead, these building blocks, kill percentage, set level data, points, distribution, reception numbers, they help us make better connections, first of all, to other sports. I mentioned before about setters like the quarterback. What if we had some of these building blocks available to us? That conversation about the setters like the quarterback becomes the setter is like the quarterback in how they make decisions and how they run the offense, trying to move the team down the field. That would be something that we could talk about if we could talk about how setters run the offense. Holding serve from tennis. Volleyball, we could be talking about holding receive, right? You should be siding out more than half the time if you want to win sets. So in tennis, your job is to hold the serve as the server. In volleyball, your job is to hold the reception, to get yourself out of that rotation. How well are you holding reception? You know what an amazing example of this would have been? Set 4, Texas A&M Nebraska, this last weekend. From 23-23 to 37-35, you had 3 times in more than 20 points where the receiving team did not hold reception. That's impressive. And it makes for great viewing. Why aren't we talking about that? Because we don't have the information to support the thing that we're seeing with our own eyes. Relying on special teams. Going back to points, right? In football, we talk about relying on special teams to score your points for you. Blocking kicks. Returning kicks for touchdowns. The whole thing here is you shouldn't rely on your special teams. Your offense should be doing the job. Same thing, remember that plot I showed you of points, how points are scored? Kills are where that's where it happens. So we could be talking about things like relying on special teams, because we could be talking about, hey, this team is relying on their serving and on their blocking because they're not getting the kills that they need to be successful, to be in a position to win. Again, these are comparisons that we could be making with other sports that have depth and have texture. And they have that because we have these building blocks that can help us understand those things. So what we need here is some stats that reflect how our game is contested and the willingness to talk about those stats that help us understand the game. We could be weaving these building blocks into our commentary, into the graphics that are shown during broadcasts. Imagine if we had like a tail of the tape or a halftime game summary that had stats on it that helped us understand who was winning and why they were winning, and not just things that showed total assists, total digs, total kills. Again, those are match level pieces of information that really don't scale into how games are being won and lost. So if we want to talk about those things, we need to provide the building blocks to talk about. And then I've been calling them building blocks because they are building towards the next evolution. But if we want to have this next evolution, then we've got to get started on this one. We've got to start using these building blocks now so that we can create the conditions necessary for this next evolution. To be able to talk about rotation level data, to have heat maps that are built on locations and directions, to be able to talk about advanced metrics that build on these. If we want to talk about things like expected kills and expected points, we need to start talking about kills and points. So that's what we're here to talk about, is let's start this evolution. Because for a lot of us in the room, we're already on the next one. And we're trying to get more people to catch up. But the only way we can get other people to catch up with us is if we provide them the path to do it. And so for us at Volley Station, the thing that we want to see us pushing from the bottom up to encourage changes in how the game is being packaged for us. Let's help other people understand the game the way we understand it. And these building blocks represent some very easy ways that we can start communicating these things and helping people understand how our game is contested. Because again, remember what I said at the beginning. Fans didn't come to this game because of knowledge. They come because of emotion. So let's take the knowledge that we have and the emotion, the passion that we have, and let's be able to connect those things better. The way that Tony Romo does. Let's be able to do that for our sport. And let's encourage that kind of representation of our sport to grow the way that fandom in our sport has grown. So, we do have a little bit of time left over, and I got a couple of things that we can do here. One, happy to answer questions. Two, I imagine that some of your questions might be around the position clusters, about players in the semifinals and finals. If you want to know who's in different groups, like where people have started out in the semis and finals, I have that, and we can look at it. So,
before we get to that, let's give it up for Eduardo. That was amazing.
So, I'm open. If y'all have some questions, go for it. And in the meantime, I'm going to put some of this position data up, and we can.
Eduardo, put the position data up.
Hey, thanks. I will. And for the record, this is Tableau. This is a great data visualization tool. Very nerdy, it's great, but it does not take your data and make it look presentable. You have to do all the data wrangling yourself. Tableau does not do that. But once you get it in here, you can do a lot of fun stuff with it. At any rate, if you got questions, raise your hand. We have a microphone that can be brought around to you because this is being recorded, and I want people to be able to hear your questions. And I'll start working on this.
And just a little background, we've been noodling this idea of analyzing the Final Four, history of the Final Four for a couple of years. I think it's just an interesting data set. I think more people need to think about the data sets that they use when they're analyzing their own team and what they want to compare it to. Where I stand, I always want to figure out how to win the last 4 matches of the year when I was with the team. So this is a cool data set.
It is indeed.
Eduardo,
Yes.
what different metrics would you use for analyzing a single match versus like pre-match preparation, let's say? Because I would see some different metrics online here.
So, give me a little bit more. Are we talking like who am I talking to? Who am I giving this information to?
You're at TV and you're presenting the game, so I completely understand the concept of kills, but I would say efficiency would be pretty cool to compare players, for example, before the regional finals or something.
Yeah. I like being able to just break out the parts of it and be able to talk about kill percentage and error percentage as independent stats. I like that. I had one of the bar graphs that I had that showed those two things laying on top of each other at the team level. I would be looking at that because being able to understand again that points, kills are going to drive most of the points, and so that therefore kills are going to most directly establish the relationship or the effectiveness that a player has for their team. I would put that at the top. And then errors after that as a little bit more context to sort of be able to talk about, well, how many errors are they giving to the other team? I also think that scales really well as you move down, or as you move to lesser experience or lower skilled areas of the game. So if you wanted to compare pros to grassroots, like club level players, you're going to see kill percentage is going to go down, error percentage is going to go up some, and the question is how close do those two come? And it starts to become very important, the relationship between the two. And I think that you can see those better if they're broken out versus if they're just in a single number. It helps you understand a little bit better how much am I scoring for my team, how much am I scoring for your team, instead of trying to extrapolate that out from a single number. What else we got? Oh yes, Brandon.
So that Volley Station is currently the people that are managing a lot of the different pro leagues and everything. What have you guys been doing in order to actually implement the changes, and have there been any challenges and everything? And if so, how have you guys handled that?
Oof, it's tough. So this is something that Ivo actually has much more experience with because he's been, one, with Volley Station from practically the outset, and two, he manages our relationships with professional leagues across the world. And so I think, please let me know if I'm off base on this, but it's a struggle because while internationally they do like to talk about points more, they are still very much just going to talk about kills, aces, blocks, the 3 places that that points come from, and that's sort of it. And as far as production goes, that's all they want to talk about. And so there is a difference between what they're talking about. Like if you watch a BNL broadcast, you're going to hear a lot about kills, aces, and blocks. And you're going to see a little bit of graphics that support that. But you're really not going to see a lot of other stuff that we've talked about here, like side out efficiency or distribution. And the efforts to make changes on that happen the same way because we're running into the same structural issues of we've got the people who produce the broadcasts They produce them for sports, not just for volleyball. And so getting them to understand the way that volleyball works, that creates some special needs and some special opportunities, that struggle is still the same, right? We face that here as much as we do elsewhere in the world. Would that be accurate?
Yeah, I'll also jump in and piggyback as Evo's coming up here. So in the U.S., the pro leagues is probably the best example that you guys would know about. We do all the data gathering, right? So we're the official stat provider for MLB, for Love, Athletes Unlimited. And so we have that data, and we're collecting that data, and then we are giving them that data, and we're working with them to put it in, to get it to them in a way that we can then transfer it to their announcers, right? And then helping them create stories with that data. Is it easy? No. There's a lot of people that need to be involved. Everybody wants their own thing. There's the debate on should we talk about this, should we talk about that. There's some people in the announcing world that wants to talk about like how far does someone run around the court during the match. These type of things. So we're having these discussions weekly, and we are now at the point where we feel like we have enough influence in the pro game, and as we build some more in the collegiate game and overseas, as we say, hey guys, why don't we all get on the same page here, so that as you bump from one match to another match, then you can follow volleyball, you can compare across leagues, you can compare across levels. And so we're trying to put these talking points into the conversations we're having with the leagues and help the announcers out, give them the information they need to tell these stories. And I'll let Evo talk a little bit more about internationally. Sorry.
So I would just add a couple of things. One, we have already created the metrics, algorithms like expected kills, efficiency, pass productivity, something that Eduardo mentioned. Maybe pass is not pass percentage, it doesn't really matter, but maybe what's the outcome of that pass, right? Like medium pass, especially versus a good pass, right? There's no big difference between these two passes when it comes to the outcome of the setup. And we're not talking about that. And we talk that medium pass is a bad pass. It's not. So we have these, and so we have these built, but now it's a problem to talk to the broadcasts, talk to the leagues, so they can incorporate that. Like Jesse said, when you have a multi-sport production companies, it's hard for them to suddenly make a switch. We have also like ideas, and we already presented that, putting heat maps on the courts. Essentially, yeah, you have a great server going in, show where she's serving for the whole league, right? Or for men's game, you have a Leon, which is crazy server, right? Show when he's putting aces on the court. We have all that ideas, we have all that data, but it's not that easy to push it to all organizations. And volleyball world, I think Jesse mentioned that, Eduardo, they want to focus on APS, attack, block, serve. And that's the direction they go, but we feel that there is a need of going much more deeper into the stats, especially what we see in football, soccer, basketball.
Any other questions? I get time for one more. We can squeeze one more in if you'll be so kind. All right. For the record, Maddie Skinner. Maddie Skinner, top outside hitter as far as kill percentage goes. 47% kill. 1% better than Sofia Maldonado Diaz, who only got to play one match. So she's at, two matches. She's at 74 attempts versus over 200 for Maddie Skinner. Big difference. But again, just cool, fun stuff to be able to nerd out about. Thank you very much for being here. For many of you, you already know how to get in touch with us. If you don't, volleystation.com, we're pretty easy to find. As a matter of fact, we're on all of the SAC packs that you picked up at registration. So thanks ABCA for that. Appreciate it. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks again. If you have any questions about anything that we do, or just want to chat, we're happy to stay around and talk. we got some exciting new things coming in 2026, and thanks again, everybody. It's great to see you.